All right. Great. Well, the first question is why have you decided to run?
Well, first of all, I never really intended to run. I,
Yeah.
I've spent 40 years, well over 40 years, in Minnesota's political landscape, more as a frontline activist,
Yeah.
um, fighting Minnesota's issues, its problems, working with various communities. And over the past decade, we've seen a huge decline in what's happening in Minnesota.
Yeah.
A lot of fraud, a lot of corruption on both sides of the aisle,
Yeah.
both parties. And so I had a lot of people pretty much say, you need to jump in because these people are not here for the fight. They're here for, political gain. They're here for to
Yeah.
make money or, get their name out there, whatever it is, popularity, but they're not here for the fight. They're not here to fix anything.
Yeah.
And I waited well over a year and I didn't really see anybody jumping in that really was here for the fight. We have the vast majority of every candidate running right now for the gubernatorial race
Yeah.
is a serial candidate. You see them every 4 years. It's like they come out of hiding, they jump into
Yeah.
the race, they don't get elected, and then afterwards they go dormant again.
Yeah.
Uh, the ones that are running that are already in office have had, 2 terms. They've had minimum up to 8 years to address or fix problems, and they haven't done anything, and they're only just now
Yeah.
addressing things
Yeah.
as campaign platforms. So it's one of those things where I realize that I am not the typical quintessential all American golden boy, but
Yeah.
I am the guy with 40 years of knowing what's going on in the state. And I gravitate through all the different communities, all the different areas, and have a very strong foothold.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that people fail to realize, especially Republicans, is that the Republican voter base in Minnesota is roughly about 27%,
Yeah.
and that's only in Minnesota's outlying rural areas. If any Republican candidate expects to get in with 27%, they're
Yeah.
delusional. They don't if they and the vast majority are afraid to go into Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, Mankato,
Yeah.
any any of our ethnic urban communities, our inner city communities that are the vast majority are ethnic. They're
Yeah.
Hispanic, Somali, Ethiopian, Southeast Asian. They will they will go to a couple of church meetings in the suburbs, but they will never engage with the people in the metro communities, which
Yeah.
I was born and raised in those communities. And a lot of those people, I have a good rapport with all the different ethnic groups. I've worked with a lot of those ethnic groups, the
Yeah.
community leaders, excuse me, for well over 40 years. So it's one of those things where it was just pretty evident that, if anybody was going to have a chance at fixing anything in the state,
Yeah.
not just for popularity, not just for votes, that actually really want to do something, it had to be somebody that really had the experience and the foothold in those communities to do it.
Yeah. All right, great. And what are your main priorities?
My main priority is number one is prosperity. We've lost so much money in our state. Again, there's a lot of different things you can address, whether it's taxes and DNR issues and you know
Yeah.
sins and tabs and fraud and all those things. But the vast majority of every problem we've had, and again, I'm no young kid. I've been around for a long time, and I've watched the decline of our state. And what's happening is the biggest issue that we have, and you can name whatever problem we have. whether it's sexualized material in our schools,
Yeah.
trans ideologies for children, um, the dissolution of the nuclear family. You name the issue: fraud, riots, protests. Everything is founded and centered on a Marxist communist ideology.
Yeah.
And yeah, those things come with a template, and that is all based on the destabilization of any country. You take Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba.
Yeah.
What you see happening in Minnesota is almost a carbon copy template of what's happened in other countries. And so
Yeah.
before you can address any other issue, the number one objective is to root out the communist socialist agendas. Now,
Yeah.
it's America. Everybody has a right to do what they want. You want to be a communist, that by all means, but not in our government. Because once you enter our government, then you're
Yeah.
committing treason and sedition.
Yeah. All right. You were mentioning the ideological penetration in schools. How do you plan to address this particular issue and protect children?
Number one is to, again, Marxism, socialism, and the destabilizations, these things all happen because they make a dependency. Number one, they break the influence of families. So
Yeah.
I am, as a Native American Indian, I can go back into our own history and see what's happening today. So you go back in time and you look at the American Indian, the government removed Native American Indians, children, from their communities, from their families, from their
Yeah.
homes, and they put them in residential schools. Not, so they could influence the children to remove any influence from their communities, from their history, from their culture,
Yeah.
from their even from their religious beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, and then begin to mold those kids in the way they wanted them to be. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things too, is to get into the schools. Now, a lot of people don't realize that we have in Rochester, Minnesota, we have a superintendent in Rochester, Minnesota, who is a former CIA operative. His name is Kent Peckel, who worked
Yeah.
with, his entire objective was working with indoctrination in third world countries with children.
Yeah.
And it just baffles me that we would let somebody like that be a superintendent in one of our big school systems.
Yeah.
So that is one thing right there, is to start addressing those things within our schools. Start to remove that type of curriculum. We have
Yeah.
laws against. The thing is that we have laws that govern those things. That we have 18 plus laws. I can't take a child into a triple X sex shop and show them porn magazines. Yet they're teaching our children these things in different graphic novels and books and school curriculum in our public schools. And so
Yeah.
nobody seems to be holding anybody not just accountable, but giving them the kind of consequences that would be a deterrent.
Yeah.
The other part to fix this is to change the curriculum, because right now we've got roughly, over the past 8 years, we've had kids graduated from high school that can barely read, they can barely write. Most
Yeah.
are very most are very unemployable, and they don't really have anything to sustain themselves with. And so that makes them an easy target again for communist socialists, because now you don't have to work. It's like, hey, we can give you Section 8 subsidized housing, we give you free food, whatever, and we subsidize your life. And when you don't have anything going for you, no pride, no ownership, it's easy to sway people with free
Yeah.
handouts. One of the things that one of my plans actually is to bring trades back into the high schools. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of a quick fix to offset that last 8 years of kids that can't get jobs. And so if we could start kids um, in the classroom, learning whether it's in the medical field, electricians, plumbers, whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Have a
Skills,
couple,
basic skills.
yeah, basic skills, basic living skills, life
Yeah.
skills. So by the time they're in their sophomore year, their junior year, they're already um, having internships, or working part-time or summers or after schools, um,
Yeah.
learning skills. And by the time they graduate, they have a high school diploma, as well as they're earning union wages. They've got benefits from those jobs. And so you eliminate the dependency that socialism and Marxism promotes, and you give them prosperity and independence,
Yeah.
which is a better sell.
Yeah. Obviously. All right. Well, the next question is about fraud and corruption. You mentioned that before, and I
Right.
wonder what are your plans to, to mitigate the effects of that of those issues.
Well, one of the things right now, everybody talks about accountability. Um,
Yeah.
there really is no accountability. We're never going to get that money back. It's gone. It disappeared. It vanished. We can complain
Yeah.
about it all we want. What we need now is to put safeguards in place to make sure it never happens again. It's kind of that story where
Yeah.
you put your hand on the stove, you got burnt. Well, now you know. So now we need to have safeguards. And the only best way to have safeguards is not just accountability, but we have to
Yeah.
have the consequences again that deter it from ever happening again. We see people that were accused of the fraud, that were convicted of fraud.
Yeah.
Um, we just saw there was one guy that was involved in the Feeding Our Future. $250 million they stole, and
Yeah.
he got a year and a day in jail for taking $250 million. And obviously, it wasn't just him. There was other people involved, but that to me is not a deterrent. That's more of an incentive. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? I mean, I guarantee you, myself and everybody I know would happily sit a year in jail for $250 million. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
when you're giving people a slap on the wrist, that's like an invitation to
Yeah,
come
it's
in. It's
like a
like, hey,
vacation. It's,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like, come on in. It's an invitation. You can come steal
Yeah.
our money if you want to sit in jail for a year. No. So we need not just the accountability, but we need the consequences that are a definite deterrent. Um,
Yeah.
but not only for the people that have stole the money, but you got to remember there are also people in our legislation that allowed it. These are the bill
Yeah.
makers, these are the lawmakers. They knew what was going on. They're in charge of these programs, they're in charge
Yeah.
of the government. And so, whether it's Democrat or Republican, because we've got people on both sides of the fence that knew
Yeah.
all about it, and they were very complicit with it. They allowed it. And so,
Yeah.
one of the things, too, though, is to let all those people feel that weight, too. They all need to be held accountable for that, too.
Yeah. What is your diagnosis of Tim Walz's term in office?
It's been a mess.
Yeah.
I know a little more about Tim Walz than people want than most Minnesotans do. A lot of Minnesotans have only recently become involved in politics, in Minnesota's politics. Um,
Yeah.
and and you see a lot of that happen with the BPOU groups, political groups, organizations, and people tend to only get involved after they become recently retired. They become empty
Yeah.
nesters, or kids went out to college, they got free time. And it becomes more of a social club than anything for them. So they're really not engaged or understand what's really been happening over the years. They haven't really seen all the different steps that led up to where we are today. Um, so Tim Walz is, I would say, isn't really the culprit. I would say Peggy Flanagan was.
Yeah.
Um, because number one, Peggy Flanagan ran, and again, Native American Indian. I follow things. Deb Haaland. I know how she got elected. I know how she got appointed to her positions. Peggy Flanagan entered the race. Um, and what happened was in from 2014 to 2016, she was training in Beijing, China. Um, and so she
Yeah.
came back. Yeah, she came back to Minnesota. When she came back to Minnesota, she was the primary trainer at the Paul Wellstone Democratic Training Camp. She was the one that personally handled. She was the handler of Tim Walz, Elon Omar, Jacob Fry, Steven Simons, the whole gambit, the
Yeah.
whole mess right there. And she basically trained each one for a specific position, kind of like a chessboard, very strategically trained and placed.
Yeah.
Um, and if you look at the way our government is run right now, all these people have gotten away with a lot of corruption, a lot of criminal activity, a lot of law breaking going on, and
Yeah.
nobody being held accountable because the guy that's supposed to be holding them all accountable, the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, well, he's part of their team. He's part of their
Yeah.
strategic setup on the chessboard. And so, yeah, Tim Walz isn't really running a lot of things. I'm very sure that Peggy Flanagan is kind of like the quintessential wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But whatever you call it, I mean, it's just been a horrible administration. Everything from the COVID shutdowns to mandates, and these people are talking about no kings rallies and all that. It's like we just had a dictator for the last 8 years, mandating and demanding, taking away people's rights, and nobody's really following all that either.
Yeah. All right. Um, you mentioned you have a lot of experience as an activist and, talking to people from different communities. How do you plan
Right.
to keep on delivering on that?
Well, I've been doing it for 40 years, so that's not going to stop.
Yeah.
I my parents, I grew up in a very, very politically active family. My parents my mother originated from the Texarkana Yaqui, from the Molina clan. She and her family were very politically involved in the 1950s. Well,
Yeah.
Native American Indians didn't become American citizens until the late 50s. And so it was easy for the federal government to pick up and shift people around. So,
Yeah.
so we're talking during the civil rights era, civil rights movements. My parents got relocated to Minnesota, and they just continued that on. My dad was I would say in the 80s, early 90s. He worked heavily with at the time in Minnesota, Hispanics were the big population. They were the biggest
Yeah.
ethnic minority population. And there was a lot of disparities with the Minnesota Department of Education. So he was one of the ones that authored the Latino consent decree to bring in like ESL for Hispanic students. And so
Yeah.
to level the playing ground. And so again, my parents have been heavily involved. I just grew up in that entire environment. I've got footholds in, all the communities. It doesn't matter whether it's Hispanic, Muslim.
Yeah.
I, I recently, just last week, went to one of our powwows, and I typically bring community leaders. I have Muslim imams and Jewish rabbis and
Yeah.
Christian pastors, and they all come and they do sweat lodges, and we powwow together and do all that stuff. One of the things, because ethnic communities don't typically give give a damn about who their politicians are. They pay more attention to their community leaders or the spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
And so and so I tend to work a lot more with them, because that bridges things across. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. So like in the early 90s, I started working as a mediator in the Twin Cities. At the
Yeah.
height of There was a lot of gang violence in the 90s. I worked
Yeah.
with gangs in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Detroit, Chicago. There was a pastor from Chicago that I worked with, Gordon McLean. He was a pastor and an author. We helped to resolve the Jerry Hoff murder. Officer Jerry Hoff was murdered in Minneapolis. We worked with that. Um, See, I wrote a few things. I've got such a big list of things. As I said, people,
Yeah.
I talk about politicians like, hey, these guys go dormant. They have no history. And people are like, well, what's your history? I was like, well, I have to write it down because I keep forgetting because it's probably about this thick. 40 years of
Yeah.
stuff goes on a long time. Let's see. Um, in the 90s, I did work with as a mediator. I worked with metro communities all throughout the state to navigate family court systems because a lot of these people are low income people. They don't have the money
Yeah.
for good
Yeah.
attorneys and they get entrapped into the system. Again, I worked with a lot of disadvantaged communities at risk youth to promote education, trades, economic security, prosperity. In the late 90s, I got a hero citation for the city of Minneapolis. There was a building burning. The cops, the fire department didn't go in. So I went in, got all the kids out, got a hero citation for that. 2000, I had a statewide focus working with the missing, murdered indigenous. Minnesota has probably, well, nationwide, there are probably more likely for indigenous women to go missing, murdered, or trafficked
Yeah.
than anybody else. Um, at that time, during the 2000s, I also did the tracking of human trafficking, drug trafficking, coming through all the different borders, whether through Canada, through Mexico, how they use the highways, the freeways, which
Yeah.
towns were the choke points. I tracked that all down. And then in the 2000s as well, I founded the American Indian Coalition, which does a lot of work with safety efforts for women, for children, things like that, people that are at risk. 2020, worked with multiple organizations working to defend communities because you got to remember 2020 was the big height of all the Minneapolis riots that were
Yeah.
spilling all over. They burned down the police station. They took over the city. They pretty much destroyed every ethnic community in the metro.
Yeah.
Um, I worked with a lot of different multiple organizations and groups to keep that contained in the metro from spilling out. You just keep going and going and going. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do
It's an
have.
amazing background.
Well, the thing is though, like I've had people say, like, well, these guys can't. What I do when I go to events, gubernatorial events or forums, people always they praise these guys that have done nothing except
Yeah.
campaign. And so I give them a little index card. I said, pick your favorite candidate, write one thing down per year, four things, one thing per year in the last election cycle that any of these people have done to support, fight for, or defend Minnesota communities.
Yeah.
Generally, they sit and think about it, and then they put the card back and leave because there are none. But they always want to come
Yeah.
back and say, what did you do? And then I have to bring out a whole list of things. Like,
Yeah.
all these things. And I'm still
Yeah.
doing them every year. We're recently talking about the big thing happening in Minnesota right now is bringing back our Minnesota state flag. Um,
Yeah.
it was taken down
Yeah. I
and
know.
it was redesigned. Well, the big problem was it was blamed on the excuse was that it was offensive and racist to Native American Indians. And I don't know any natives that were offended by it.
And
Or
they didn't ask you or any leader from your communities, I
no,
guess,
they
to
didn't. They
change
they
that.
didn't ask our opinion. They just came up with this
Yeah.
fabricated story that you guys are offended on our. And to me, that is more racist and offended than anything for
Yeah.
somebody not native to be offended on our behalf of something we weren't offended by. Um,
Yeah.
but what I did is I did out of our 11 major tribes, I did a full on survey. I went to all the tribes, all the tribal councils, all the people, and we did a statewide survey that proved that
Yeah.
natives were not offended. Um, and I gave that information to Tim Walz's office, the governor's office, Secretary of State, Keith Ellison's office, state auditor, everybody, even all of Minnesota's main media outlets. None
Yeah.
of them wanted to publicize the information that it was a lie. But funny thing is now we have cities throughout Minnesota that are taking back their flag, their old flag.
Yeah.
They're they're going to their city councils and they're demanding, they want it back. And this past week, I've been watching videos that people send me. And what's funny is I started this, I started pushing back against it, being a native. We have one other native that she's the vice chair of the Minnesota GOP, Donna Bergstrom. She was one
Yeah.
of the ones that jumped on this with me back when it first started because she's a native as well. Um, but now, over the past few weeks, as communities, as cities are going to the city councils pushing back, it's funny that they're referencing and they're citing the work I did. There's like, well, back, Raul Estrada proved that ABC, and this is the documentation, this is the data. We didn't get a voice, we didn't get a choice. And it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting that the people are saying, hey, this guy talked about this back then. Why didn't we do anything back then? And I think that's pretty interesting. It's to me, it's kind of I don't want to say a pat on the back, but a testament that even if it takes a couple of years, you can still do some good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that they should have listened to you when it came to changing the flag, because I don't understand why, they got to speak for Native Americans when they are not part of the community,
Right,
or
right,
they
right,
even don't care. Do you
right.
think that your background as a Native American is, it can become a problem for some voters, or there's people who support this radical ideological platform of communism and socialism? Do you think that
Yeah,
they have
I
a
think I
yeah,
think it is a problem for them because number one, it undoes everything they try to use it to weaponize. So keep in mind,
yeah,
a lot of the left, a lot of the socialists, a lot of the liberals, you constantly hear them talk about nobody's illegal on stolen land, or they'll
yeah,
have all their rallies and events. And one of the first things they do is they try to utilize and weaponize because they will recite a native land acknowledgement. So when a Native
yeah,
American Indian stands up and says, okay, well, here I am, vote for me to govern my own land, because apparently this is what you're reciting. You're
yeah,
reciting that native land acknowledgement that I should be in charge of my own land. Well,
yeah,
you have two.
regardless of your ideas or whatever, you're you
Right,
know
right.
you're the one who knows about your community.
Well, the thing is, though, it hits them in the face and it hits them hard with reality
Yeah,
that either you're full of crap, you're just reciting this stuff, and you're full of crap,
yeah,
or you have to stand by it because the Democrat gubernatorial candidate is Amy Klobuchar, who has done nothing except hurt ethnic communities in Minnesota.
yeah,
She's done nothing positive for anybody. Even if she hasn't hurt them, she's done nothing positive. She's done nothing to promote, enhance, or help them grow.
yeah,
And so you have a choice now. You can vote for the Native American Indian that you recite that has a right to his land, or you can vote for the old white lady who hasn't done anything for you. Which one are you going to do?
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
it puts people over a barrel. But what it does at the same time is and I see this very often. My running mate and I, we had this conversation before I even jumped in. I said the biggest opposition we will get will not come from Democrats. It will come from the far right leaning establishment Republicans because
yeah,
they have a system where, again, I'm not the all American golden boy. They want the blonde hair, blue eyed, big white
yeah,
smiley teeth in the Brooks Brothers suit that looks just like them. That's their candidate. Either that or the all American black Christian guy. I'm
Yeah.
none of those. I'm none of those. But I am the guy that resonates and can get, like we were talking about earlier, there is that 27% vote. They can get all of it, but they will never get into the metro because that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
and,
right.
and so it becomes a big threat to them. We have like my campaign. I'm registered, I'm filed, done everything as a Republican. And smaller communities in the metro, St. Paul, Mankato, I get invited out all the time to all their debates, to all the forums, because they all want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
Where I don't get invited to are the small rural communities that are run by old establishment GOP people,
Yeah.
where they perceive it as a threat. And it's interesting because I've actually been invited to events. My running mate and I have driven, 3, 4, 5 hours out to these places.
Yeah.
And then we get there and they tell us, well, we were uninvited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah,
Huh.
not that guy. We don't want to hear that guy. Well,
Yeah. For
one
some
of the things,
reason.
what's that?
No, I was saying that, yeah, for some reason, there's this thing that right now some candidates talk about some more independent candidates talk about the uni party. I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
that idea too. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's the establishment
yeah,
from both parties,
yeah,
doing the same thing. Yeah.
right. Well, and one of the things too, though, and again, like I said, it's not one side or the other. So I don't
Yeah.
really, I don't really campaign or look to try to, get support from those people. They've already made their minds up. I mean, they can go to conventions and caucuses. They have a predetermined notion before they even get there what they're going to
Yeah.
do because that's already been ingrained in them. They're not open minded. They're not looking for real change. They're just following standard protocol that they've learned over the years.
Yeah.
And so, like recently, was about a month ago, there is a Republican gubernatorial forum and a debate in
Yeah.
Albert Lee, Minnesota. And I used to live there. I lived there briefly for a while, and I assumed it was like, well, why didn't I get invited to that? I used to actually live there. And then somebody
Yeah.
brought up that they're like, well, remember in the 90s when you were tracking all the human trafficking and drug trafficking is because, and I realized later that it was like, because I had pointed out and I had called out a lot of the people that were complicit in their city government, their city
Yeah.
officials, and
Yeah.
even the residents that were complicit that knew about the trafficking in the city, but they allowed it. They didn't do anything
Yeah.
about it. And they were like, yeah, they don't want you coming down and publicizing that anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, there is a certain
Yeah.
element where I understand that, again, I'm not running to be like in the 1950s, 1960s. You go out, you shake hands, you kiss babies, and you tell a whole lot of political lies to get votes.
Yeah.
I tell it like it is. I tell people the truth. They want to know something about taxes and budgets. I don't say, yeah, we're going to cut taxes and we're going to, it's like, no, tell them the truth, what we can and cannot do. And some people don't like to hear the truth. Um, it's so
Yeah.
many people want to talk about common sense government until you tell them what it takes to get common sense government.
Yeah.
And they don't like that. Sometimes it's not all pretty.
Yeah. It is not. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for answering all my questions. And well, my best wishes for you on
You
the
bet.
race.
Well, it's going to be a fight, so I'm not giving up. Like I said, I've been doing this for 40 years. Regardless of the outcome at the election, I'm going to wake up
Yeah.
the next day and keep doing what I've been doing anyway. So,
Yeah, that's great. All
so
right.
all
Well,
right, we'll see ya.
hope you have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.